It begins with a mystery, a small Italian car that changed design forever. In the smoky streets of post-war Turin, a daring idea was born. A car that was both fast and beautiful, yet simple in its engineering. This car, the Cisitalia 202, would later be called a moving sculpture by a famous museum director, and its story would become one of art, sport, and survival. Behind its sleek curves lay secrets of ingenious engineering and the ambitions of men who dared to dream. In the shadows of ruin, a new era of motoring was quietly unfolding. In the years immediately following the end of the Second World War, Italy was a land of rebuilding and new ideas. It was during this time that Piero Dusio, a wealthy industrialist from Turin, decided to take a chance on his passion for racing. Dusio was not only a businessman, but also an experienced driver. He had once played for the famous Juventus football club and had competed in pre-war races, finishing as high as third in the Mille Miglia in 1938. With his riches from textile and military uniform contracts, he founded a company known as Compagnia Industriale Sportiva Italia. In short, this company became known as Cisitalia. Early on, Dusio brought together a team of talented engineers and designers. One of the first projects was a small single-seat racing car known as the D46. The design of the D46 was entrusted to Dante Giacosa, a well-known engineer who had helped design the Fiat Topolino before the war. Although Giacosa later returned to Fiat, his early work laid the foundation for what would come next. The success of the D46 in races made it clear that Cisitalia was capable of something special. Building on the experience of the D46, Dusio decided to create a two-seat sports car for both racing and road use. This new car was to be called the 202. Unlike many cars before it, the Cisitalia 202 was built on a tubular chassis, a structure made from tubes of chrome molybdenum steel that formed a space frame. This design was a radical departure from the traditional ladder frames used in most cars at the time. The tubular chassis made the car both light and stiff, allowing the engine to be mounted lower in the body for better handling. The engine in the 202 was derived from the Fiat 1100. It was a four-cylinder engine with a displacement of 1089 cubic centimeters. The engine's bore measured approximately 2.68 inches and its stroke about 2.95 inches. With modifications such as a new aluminum cylinder head and an Abarth twin carburetor intake system, this engine produced around 55 horsepower at 5,500 revolutions per minute. In some variants, the power was tuned up to 60 horsepower. The transmission was a 4-speed manual, with options for a floor-mounted or a steering wheel-mounted gear shift. All of these mechanical elements came largely from Fiat parts, though they were extensively reworked for better performance. One of the most remarkable features of the Cisitalia 202 was its body. The body was hand-formed out of aluminum using a special alloy called Intelli-Car. The design was a breakthrough in automobile styling. Pininfarina, who later became known simply as Pininfarina, was one of the key figures in shaping the car's look. His design featured smooth, flowing lines that integrated the hood, fenders, and headlights into one continuous surface. At the front, the car had an oval opening for the radiator, which was covered by a grille made of 23 vertical, convex aluminum slats. The headlights were round and set high on the fenders, giving the car a distinctive look that was both modern and elegant. The Cisitalia 202 was not produced in one uniform design. In fact, due to the small production numbers and the involvement of several independent coach builders, every example was unique. Most of the 202s were built by Pininfarina, but others were also built by Stabilimenti Farina and by the independent coach builder Alfredo Vignale. Some of the variations include the 202 Grand Sport, the 202 SC, a coupe and convertible version, and the 202 SMM, Spider Mille Miglia, built for racing. In 1947, just a year after the war, the 202 was introduced to the public. Its debut came at events such as the Italian Grand Prix in Milan and the Paris Motor Show. At these shows, the car was displayed in two main versions, a sport version and a sport special version. Eventually, these were unified into a single Grand Sport model that produced 55 horsepower. Despite its small size and light weight, Its curb weight was around 1750 pounds. The 202 was capable of reaching speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. It was a fast and nimble car, built for both the racetrack and the open road. Racing played an important role in the story of the Cisitalia 202. In 1947, the Mille Miglia, a long-distance road race across Italy, was revived after a long pause due to the war. Cisitalia entered several 202s into the race. One of the most famous drivers to race a Cisitalia was Tazio Nuvolari, a legend of Italian motor racing. Despite being in his 50s and in less than perfect health, Nuvolari drove his Cisitalia with such skill that he managed to lead for much of the race. Although his engine eventually suffered from water ingestion in heavy rain, causing him to finish in second place, his performance cemented the reputation of the Cisitalia 202 as a serious racing machine. The success on the racetracks brought international attention to the Cisitalia 202. In 1951, the Museum of Modern Art in New York chose the 202 as part of its 8 automobiles exhibition. It was the first car in the world to be permanently exhibited in a modern art museum. The director of the museum at the time, Arthur Drexler, famously described the car as a sculpture in motion. This recognition was not only a celebration of the car's beauty, but also a validation of its innovative design. Even today, the Cisitalia 202 is still admired by collectors and enthusiasts for its timeless style and engineering brilliance. However, despite its groundbreaking design and racing success, the Cisitalia 202 was not a commercial hit. Only about 170 examples were built between 1947 and 1952. The high cost of production and the use of hand-formed coachwork meant that the car was expensive. For instance, one version of the 202 was sold for around 3,900,000 Italian lire, a very high price for that time. The limited production numbers and the handcrafted nature of the vehicles meant that each one was a unique piece of art, but it also meant that the company could not sustain mass production. Financial difficulties eventually took their toll on Cisitalia. In 1949, Piero Dusio became involved in an ambitious project to build a Grand Prix car known as the Typo 360. This car was designed with a mid-mounted engine and four-wheel drive, and it even involved the help of Ferdinand Porsche. Some accounts say that Dusio helped post bail for Ferdinand Porsche, who was then a prisoner of war in France. The Typo 360 project turned out to be extremely expensive, and the financial strain it placed on the company forced Dusio to hand over control of Cisitalia to his employee, Carlo Abarth. Dusio eventually left Italy for Argentina, where he tried to set up an automobile manufacturing operation under a new company. Production of the Cisitalia 202 ended in 1952. Even though Cisitalia as a company did not survive for long, its influence on automotive design was enormous. The use of a tubular chassis, the integrated body design, and the aerodynamic styling of the Cisitalia 202 set new standards for sports cars. Many later Italian Grand Tourers and sports cars would draw inspiration from the design and engineering innovations that were first seen in the 202. Inside the car, the focus was on simplicity and functionality. The interior of the Grand Sport was modest but well crafted. The dashboard featured 2 large circular instruments, one for speed and one for engine speed, tachometer. The controls were straightforward, with a gear shift mounted on the floor, although customers could request a steering wheel mounted gear change at no extra charge. The seats were available in either leather or fabric, and the entire cabin was finished with a high level of craftsmanship that reflected the Italian dedication to design. In addition to the main production models, there were several one-off versions built on the 202 chassis. Some coach builders, such as Carrozzeria Castagna and Carrozzeria Alemano, created unique designs that further enhanced the car's reputation as a work of art. For instance, one special version, known as the 202 Abarth, was built by Carrozzeria Alemano and designed by Franco Scaglione. These unique examples are highly prized by collectors today because they represent the pinnacle of Italian coach building and the experimental spirit that drove post-war automotive design.